I literally just had the most insightful, interesting, eye-opening, thought-provoking conversation that I have had I was going to say in a long while, but that's actually not true, because I'm hoping that I'm picking people to be guests on my podcast that I'm genuinely interested in speaking to and learning about their lives. So my guest, Mr. Rusty Russell Burridge, just so happens to be one of my bosses. My other boss is my husband. So, but Rusty just kind of really gave me a real insightful conversation about not just his life, but how he got there, and his thoughts that go from just like the universe, the humanity, and transhumanism. Now, this is a phrase that I've heard now quite a bit since becoming involved with Radio Hydrogen, because Rusty is the founder of Radio Hydrogen. My excitement about being asked to be involved with this radio station was like, oh my gosh, it was enormous right away, because hello, it's Australia, and as a British person that has grown up watching Home and Away, Neighbours, Prisoner Cell Block H, or whatever, it was pretty much like such an honor. This particular radio station, with their nerdiness, really, that's what it is. They are a group of people that are so smart. I couldn't understand how and why they would want to be involved with me. So even now, I'm still just going, okay, I'm not going to talk anymore. If they still want to be associated with me, I'm not going to say a damn thing. True imposter syndrome going on with me here. I'm so happy that he agreed to talk to me on camera and on the microphone, so that everyone can kind of hear a little bit about his story and his thinking, and what Radio Hydrogen, really what the premise is about this radio station. He is fascinating, he is funny, he is very self-deprecating. We had a great conversation with Rusty Russell Burridge. Welcome, my darlings. Tonight's episode of Living Out Loud with Loretta is literally with my boss. His name is Rusty Burridge, right? And he is the founder of Radio Hydrogen, which is based out in Australia, although he's a Brit like me. Is that right, Rusty?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
So please explain, first and foremost, let me just explain to my audience, you are currently on lockdown in Wales, right?
Yeah, we're in semi quasi lockdown at the moment. We've got restrictions. We've got freedom of movement during the day, but apparently the virus gets its most dangerous at 6 o'clock in the evening, and the pubs have to be closed down. So,
I mean, it doesn't mean that people stop drinking, obviously. So
no.
right.
No.
That is a strange sort of law. Like, okay, yeah, why they think the virus does not. I guess maybe if they think nighttime and people become more intoxicated and then lose their boundaries, etc., etc. So maybe that could be the thinking. So okay, you are in Wales, but where are you from? How did you even start this radio station? I mean, I know a little bit about your history, so please explain to my audience who you are and how you came to be.
What do you mean?
First, do you have an adult beverage?
I do, and I'm not a great drinker, but tonight I have my coffee, right?
Oh, okay.
And the adult component, I mean, I assume you mean alcohol rather than something from an adult store.
Yes.
Is Kahlua.
Audience, you must understand. This is when you go onto Radio Hydrate and you understand that I am confused as to why they have like included me in their lineup of programs, because these guys are smarter than bloody Smart Way. I mean, no, Safe Way. Yeah, okay, doesn't matter. Still, we should still cheers, even though you have a coffee with Kahlua in it. There you go. Cheers. Oh, marvelous. Mm.
Right.
All right, Rusty Burridge. First of all, let's explain the name Rusty and what is what's the name you were given at birth?
The name I was given at birth was Russell, and I had very, very extreme red hair. We got Guernsey ancestry, and what happened was when I was 15, I was shipped out to Guernsey, and so the rest of my childhood, little though that was, and young adulthood and up to midlife adulthood was spent in Guernsey, really.
So and Guernsey, is that where you met my old friend from drama school and episode 4 guest Craig Bowles? Is that where you met?
That's our common ground, absolutely, yeah. I'm a bit like Yossa Hughes in a way. I've had a very itinerant life. I'm very much an introvert, very much outside of society. And the 3 things I couldn't hold down was a job, a place to live, and a relationship. So from the age of, I don't know, 18, just had lots of relationships, lots of affairs, lots of jobs, and lots of homes. And I think basically I am a hermit who tried to work with society, never did, became incredibly unsuccessful, and find myself kind of at odds with normal society. And in my early 50s, I was invited out to Australia by a girlfriend who was a platonic girlfriend, became a romantic girlfriend, who became a platonic girlfriend. And I experienced, that's my first encounter with radio. And I got
no. Listen, we can't skip past that. So,
okay.
So hold on. So she invited you out to. Was she Australian, or she had moved to Australia from England and said, "Hey, come out"?
Her name was Kylie, and if it wasn't for her, there would be no Radio Hydrogen. So, but there are several people. If it wasn't for, there would be no Radio Hydrogen. So
okay. So you ended up in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but you don't just land in, Adelaide or Perth or wherever and just Melbourne and decide, hey, I'm going to start a radio station. What a great idea.
Well, that's Kylie.
Like Kylie Minogue.
Yeah, it wasn't actually Kylie Minogue. It was another Kylie. Yeah. Just so, she was kind of thick with the local radio station, and she said, "Why don't you go and knock on their door and see if you can do a show?" I was a kind of a crappy mobile DJ in Guernsey. I was like the roller skating, the roller disco DJ kind of a thing. And so she said, "Go and knock on the station door, and I'll introduce you. And I'll let them know you're coming." So I went and knocked on the door, and it was a very hick kind of community station, and. So they sort of they gave me a little bit of training. It was there's a guy called Tony Becker who at the time ran the station, and he took me under his wing, taught me how to use an FM station, an FM mixing desk, and that kind of a thing. And Australian stations, particularly the kind of obscure little hick ones, are very undernourished for content. So owing to the fact that they're kind of poorly attended, I had so much free reign. So I put on a couple of music shows, and then in Oz, they don't do speech-based shows very well. I don't know what it's like in America where you are, but there's no real equivalent of like Radio 4.
Wow. No, in America, there's a lot of talk radio.
The talk radio in Australia is biased towards things like footy and sport and what have you. I don't know. There's an equivalent of, say, the Infinite Monkey Cage. On Aussie. If there is, I don't know. But I started doing speech-based shows on hick Aussie stations. And I had a lot of fun with that, and it was received both poorly and well. So and then
explain.
Well, some people, apparently a couple of people, a couple phoned in the station. What's that bloody pommy puff talking about? You know. But and whereas other people felt that it was a breath of fresh air. So yes. I started making as much speech based as I did music based, and I was just given free rein. And Tony and I used to come into the station late at night. We had the keys to the station when it was on the loop. You know, a lot of stations have music on the loop.
Yes.
And we would just go into the station and put on an impromptu show. And it was, and it really, it was like I died and gone to heaven. You know, I had this, you know, not a terribly big station, very, very community, very hick, but nonetheless an FM station at my disposal. We would creep in there midnight and put on impromptu shows, and it was really magical, and it still is magical. I love that. And then that's where I met Chris, the guy who I started building Hydrogen with. I came back to England for a bit. He was in at the station. It's Tribe FM if you want to go look at it. For a few months while I wasn't there, I met him. Didn't like him. I don't think he liked me much. And he was just like the polar opposite of me in every conceivable way. Whereas I was, I don't know, disenfranchised, sometimes vagrant, and certainly, I don't know. I have I don't have a healthy disrespect for authority. I have an absolute contempt for authority. Whereas Chris was wired the other way, and I didn't think I liked him very much at the time, and he had quite a lot of rumors surrounding him, because he was this kind of guy that had shiny shoes or hush puppies and shirt done up nicely and stuff, and very, very admin, very rule observing and stuff. And he spent the last 25, 30 years wandering around all these obscure stations in Australia, community, hick, one kangaroo listening to kind of thing. And part of his business was like telecommunications and stuff, but he also seemed to be putting cherries on the top. He was upping the game technologically of all these stations. So the rumor was that he was basically operating like some man in black, operating for the government, preparing all these kind of derelict and undersubscribed hick community radio stations as a massive propaganda machine for whatever social apocalypse occurred. You know, that you'd have this like not unlike COVID-19, where and those were the rumors, and
did he know about these rumors, and was he happy to have them?
Well, there is the conversation, because these rumors were about him before I ever set foot at Tribe FM, okay. And I liked them so much that I exaggerated them, I suppose. Or rather, I gave them more airtime. I gave those rumors. I thought, I like that rumor. It's brilliant. This guy who's kind of square, who's kind of conservative with a small c, and very tidy and organized and everything done by the book, was actually some dark, sinister government agent. And I thought, oh, I'm having some of that. So it's like, so I took the old rumor, which had pretty much faded into obscurity, and I pumped it out and I pumped it out and I pumped it out. And one night I was working at the station, still at the mutual frosty period, and I did a show late at night, and I came out, I made a cup of tea. He was still around, and we got talking, and he had a dream about radio, not unlike Radio Hydrogen, probably a good 85% overlap. And we talked about that. And I had to come back to Britain, and we started working on putting radio shows together. And then we talked about building Hydrogen. It's been a very bumpy, clumsy, ungainly, almost amateur gingerbread thing, but it's starting to coalesce now. So we formed that friendship, and Craig was a natural choice because we were creatively involved in Guernsey. We had Guernsey in common. Guernsey's a very strange community, by the way. It's not some microcosm of Britain. It really is an autonomous culture. And so Craig was the natural choice. We did this very bad, cheesy Christmas single together,
I've heard it. I'm sorry. I actually asked Craig if it could be re-released. This was the one with the vocalist, beautiful woman, whatever. Yeah.
Lauren Francis, who's with Cradle of Filth, I think it is. And she didn't when I said, because we're so nerdy. There's a bunch of little pale Ventolin toting nerdy boys. Yeah, sort of like, hello, we're Square. Would you like to do a Christmas single with us? Sure, slap a couple of £100 on the table, I'll do it. Oh, she's from Cradle of Filth. Who are they? Is that some kind of laundry company? And it's so when we asked her, we said, oh look, we're going to release now. Do you want how do you want your credits to be on the song? She said, no, I don't want any credits on this.
Seriously?
Yeah. So it was we was just a little bit too unrock and roll. Do you know what I mean? I was a nerd and a geek throughout my life, not out of choice. I mean, so and then when Geeky Chic kind of cycled round, then that was like when the tumblers fell into place for 5 minutes. It was okay to be nerdy. I think Geeky Chic has moved on, but the one thing you can say about more nerdy, less rock and roll people is that we're authentic. That's it.
You're far more interesting that way, because if you want to have conversations, if you are remotely interesting as a human yourself and you want to have interesting conversations with other interesting people, then you want to seek out those that their thinking is wider than this. And if it's about being a nerd and you are authentically a nerd, that to me is like, oh my gosh, that is far sexier and far more interesting. And I think there are a lot of people that feel the same way. I know I'm not here on my own. I know I certainly have quite a few girlfriends that feel exactly the same. Like, I married a music nerd. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He's a jazz music aficionado. Put him on a stage and just go and sit down and watch him do his thing. Or put on some jazz and let him just talk to you about whatever. I sit there like, okay, what? And then what? And then what happened? Oh my gosh, so explain it. It's fascinating to me. I love humans with brains.
Yeah, no, me too. I do. And it's I was always very attracted to nerdy girls. What a friend of mine's mum termed as sleepy pixies. But sleepy pixies that I was attracted to tended to think that I was trouble. And I suppose, although nerdy, because I was so inconsistent with homes and jobs and relationships, I wasn't a bad boy, so I couldn't get into that gang. And the sleepy pixies that I so fell in love with thought, well, no, he's kind of trouble actually. So it's just I think that's possibly
why, because you weren't stable.
Yeah, I would say so. Yes. Well, I was fickle as well, and quite shallow, and I think like I think I like me now. I don't think I like me. If I would steer my daughters away from anybody who was like me back then. But I like me now. I didn't like me then, but I like me now.
How have you come to that point of liking you now? What has occurred? Have you done therapy, or is it just life lessons and sort of age and just
it gets knocked out of you? I suppose having your blind spots and hypocrisies shown to you, it's an uncomfortable and ugly experience, but it's also liberating. So really, really examining your motivations. Like if you think to yourself, I'm going to hold that door open for a person. Is it because I'm a charitable person, I'm civilized or altruistic or compassionate, or is there a sexual agenda? So it's about really knowing your mind. That's just one example pulled out of the air. So like in every action we do, we can convince ourselves, or not even convince ourselves. We can think that this is an action based on that. But then if you examine it further, and I think I had some pretty serious blind spots, a little bit like the Ricky Gervais character in The Office. There were so for all my authentic nerdery, there were also some sort of trying too hard to be interesting or trying too hard to fit in, and of course that had the reverse effect.
Interesting. So when did it click for you? When did you sort of, or was it a gradual realization and uncovering, the curtains being pulled back and you going, No,
it wasn't like a graduated curve. It was like bumpy, lumpy, psychologically horrid realizations and ontological, existential crashes. And I think all the things that maybe I might have buried as a child, they just came out, and all sorts of, I don't know, bad programming by culture, by parents, by teachers, but also some really stupid decisions, relationship and money decisions primarily. And
did that change overnight with the realization? Did that change overnight, or is it something you're still working through?
I think what changes overnight is the plateaus. You get to a plateau of realization. You get there, you get this sort of realization, you up your level, you level up.
Yeah.
And then you spend 2 or 3 years, and then something happens, some realization of how you treated somebody badly, or when I cringe about bad behavior, they come out physically. So for example, and it's not an affectation, it's not unlike Tourette's. I'll be sitting in a restaurant with anybody or wherever, and I'll go, ah. And it's actually, and it's sort of like, and it's because I've kind of got lost in my internal dialogue, and I'm just cringing about something that I did that was horrendous, and I think, and so the cringes come, and it's like the subconscious has written me a memo of how much of a twat I was on that occasion. And I'm going, oh, surely not. And the subconscious goes, no, you were. And I'm thinking, yeah. And then I review it and examine it, every microscopic detail, look for hypocrisies, look for the less than savory attitudes. And it's so I think I've done a good job of introspection, of really knowing who and what I am. Who is an individual thing, what is a human?
You are anti, for my Americans, or anti, if my children will allow me to say it, anti-establishment, anti-government, anti-whatever. So anti-spirituality, you explain to me what your belief is with the universe, with spirituality, with humanity. What is your belief, and how the heck then did you get to meet this lady?
All right. Okay. Good question. Good parts A and B. If you were to, I guess I've been a lifelong anarchist, and it's not because and when I say lifelong, I wasn't some sort of 8-year-old reading the book about the levelers or anything like that. It wasn't intellectual precociousness. It was just an abject hatred of authority, almost built in.
Coming from your parents, do you think?
No. My parents were as right-wing and as authoritarian as you could get.
But maybe that's why.
It wasn't rebellion, because during my childhood I was left to my own devices, so I had practically no parental supervision. Thank God.
Only child?
No, but not only, but a sideways child. So there are so many siblings and step siblings and rumored siblings. So that's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you formed your own. You were aware of your own thoughts, which formed of your own volition at a young age.
Yeah, purely through time spent alone, purely through freedom. I'm not anti-government. I'd be very pro-government when governments behave themselves. When they behave themselves, count me in. And
where and when in history has that ever happened?
it hasn't yet.
Precisely.
Yeah. So if I were born in, I don't understand why I'm born into this world. I come from oblivion, and I'm born into this world, and because I share the same DNA of the people that I'm born into, that I'm somehow answerable to their laws, and I have to pay taxes to receive a second-rate education and inhale pollutants. So I'm kind of confused. So as far as governments go, I'm in. If you give me a contract and say, we'll give you this, and in return, we'd like you to do that, I will honor that contract. Believe me. So I am an anarchist, but I'm happy to be a law-abiding citizen when governments are law-abiding citizens. And when that happens, we will strike up a deal. Yeah. And it will be amicable, and it will be civilized, and it will be mutually beneficial. Spirituality, I am an atheist of sorts, in the sense that I don't have a God or a religion. I've had innumerable religious experiences. I've had all the things that I've read about in the Bible and in Buddhist texts and stuff like that. So I have fantastical. I'm not a druggie or an alcoholic. I've never been really into. I've taken drugs and I've had alcohol, but they're not part of my history. They're not part of my life. So all the religious fantastical experiences I've had are either a very pleasant psychosis, or the byproduct of what is clear. The one thing I could say I'm self-deprecating, where I'm not self-deprecating, is that I know I'm extraordinarily imaginative. And so it's possible that the religious experiences I've had are as a consequence of just having a fantastic imagination, or it's possible that there's some supernatural agency involved. I seem to be the only person that I've ever met that really doesn't know. Richard Dawkins knows that there's not a God. Billy Graham knows that there is a God. I don't know. So I can't commit. There's nothing in the human religions. I draw a lot of comfort from Buddhism, from Buddhist texts. There's some because I see Buddhism very much as the people say Freud was the grandfather of modern psychology. I would say it was the Buddha, but the Christian parables are very useful as well. There's some interesting Christian parables. The whole thing about you got two shirts, this guy's got none, give him his spare shirt. If that came from Christianity, and he or she or they who is without sin cast the first stone. And it's just like so those are useful parables, and I've rather modernized the cast the first stone one. Let he or she or they who is without sin cast the first stone. Let he, she, or they who has never been a dickhead judge you. Yeah.
I'm quoting that.
Yeah.
I am quoting that.
Yes.
Yes.
So I live in a universe. Yes. I live in a sensory universe, because all the universe comes to me through my senses. It comes through my eyes, my ears, my whatever, all my senses. And I know how corruptible those senses are. So the way they represent the universe is not necessarily some objective truth. In fact, we know it's not, right? So I don't trust my sensory universe. I love it and I interact with it, and it makes life navigable, mainly. And then God has only ever come to me through other people. And we know what other people are like. So we know that I know I'm flawed, and I know you are. So God has always needed salesmen. And so my deal with God is this. It's rather like the government. My attitude towards government is, you behave yourselves, we've got a contractual deal, a mutually for which I'll make sacrifices and compromises. My contract with God is, come here in 3D and speak English. Don't give me signs, don't give me symbols, don't give me omens, because they are so ambiguous and don't give me religious experiences either, because wonderful though they are, they don't clinch it.
The last part of my question, my original question to you, was how and what made it possible then for you, who, in your own words, you've had so many relationships, you've lived in so many places, you weren't able to kind of hold down any of that, but you meet this queen, this feline queen. How, who, and what made that possible?
My daughter's a genius. And her genius extends back before she was born. Because here's the thing, and I mean this with all due respect, because I've said, let he or she or they who is not a dickhead judge you, right? Okay. Thomasina and I, like every person I've ever met, every person, without exception, the Dalai Lama, well, I haven't met the Dalai Lama, but witnessed, is half heroic angel. Every human being is half heroic angel and half dickhead. Every single one. And that applies to Thomasina, and that applies to me. And that applies to my precious daughter and my fabulous stepdaughters and stepsons and cats and dogs and pigeons, right? So that applies to everything, right? Now, my daughter was very cleverly born, and somehow, miraculously, and I don't know how, she managed just to select the amazingness of Thomasina and the amazingness of me. And those were the two sets of genes she selected. She discarded the 50% crap that was in both of us and put the 50% brilliance that's in us both. And I don't, you know, I'll blow my own trumpet. And then she wrapped that up in her own volition and was born. And that's why, you know, nature makes us love our children. We don't have much in the way of choice there. We love them because nature wires us to love them. So I love her as a father, but I love her also as a miraculous entity.
So explain to me where, what, and who makes miraculous entities.
Well, like I said to you before, I don't know, but I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this. Who, what, big numbers make miraculous entities. If you have eternal time and eternal space, everything is statistically inevitable. And we win lotteries and lose lotteries every day. We win lotteries in health and lose lotteries in health, in romance, in sex, in money, in job opportunities. So if you have enough experiences, if you roll enough dice, pretty much every number comes up. Because miracles don't happen every day. Little ones do, but big ones don't. And I think it's down to big time and big space.
Something you, as much of a dropout, or, you know, you didn't succeed in this, or you had so many of this, so many of that. Look at where you are now. Look at whom is in your life now, and look at what you're doing now. Now, a lot of it has to do with not just the choices or the bad choices you made, but the good choices that you made. The bad choices were made for a reason, even though we don't feel that at the time when the bad choices are being made. And sometimes those bad choices are fun to make. But when you have to reap the rewards or the repercussions of the bad choices, you're like, oh shit, I wish I hadn't done that. But you are where you are now. I don't know if you 30 years ago, if you would have been ready for Thomasina, this queen, this feline queen, would you have been ready for her?
Well, Tigerina is 19 yeyears old now. So I wasn't, we were grossly incompatible, but there was just this weird kind of chemistry. So I have to look at all the previous, the last few relationships have all been very beneficial for me. They've been formative. I have enjoyed, you know, I'm like a female platonic friend factory. And it's like, you know, in you go, romance and sex, out comes the platonic friend. Romance, sex, out comes the platonic friend. And it's just, so I've got to say,
Can I just say, I hope you're not seeing that as a negative thing. I think,
God, no.
Right, it's a positive thing that they don't hate you and say, you know what, fuck you, I never want to hear or see you again. Like, they know there's something about you as a human being, as a creation, that is something and someone they want to keep in their lives, even if you're not romantically involved with each other. So
absolutely. I think it's just because one happens to be male and female. So it's just that they would be male platonic friends if they were men.
right. Or just that there was a sexual connection, because you could still have, if you enjoyed your own sex, if you were same-sex lover or whatever else, it's not about your sexuality. It's about your soul, your spirit, the person that is, Rusty Burridge, Russell Burridge.
Russell?
That same young human who was left to his own devices, not abandoned, but left to his own devices, and had his own brain that worked so well, where it wasn't just like, it wasn't wasted. It wasn't a wasted brain. It was put to use right away. So that same brain has continued to grow and continue to manifest other thoughts, other ideas, other, things that make you the adult you now are. So any lovers that you had in the past that have said, okay, we might not be lovers anymore, and I might hate you as a lover, but as a human being, you're incredible, and I need to have you in my life. That in itself is an enormous achievement. It really is, because I don't know how many friends you have that are in touch with all of their past lovers. I'm certainly not. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I'm certainly not in touch with them all.
What propels you forward? What keeps you going, like putting one foot in front of the other, metaphorically, obviously, because we're all stuck in one place right now. What keeps you moving? What keeps you pursuing your ambition and, wanting to make radio hydrogen as good as it can be, and wanting to make I'm assuming your relationship has gone on now for how many years?
With Himani, 2 years and counting. Well, actually, nearly three.
Okay.
Yeah. But here's the thing: it's that's one of the advantages. Well, there's a dozen advantages to being older, kids. Believe me, honestly, it's true. You might lose your looks, you might lose some of your mojo, but some of the serenity you gain, it's worth it. I promise.
You gain serenity, you gain knowledge, you gain self-assuredness, you gain obviously experience. Like your experiences now at the age that you are not the same as when your daughter was born, so you are better informed to help. I'm not going to say guide her. Your purpose is obviously to first and foremost make sure that you, the parent, you yourself, is taken care of, and second of all, to be there to kind of help them navigate in a way, but not take away their pain, not take away their experiences, etc., etc. How do you, as someone who is, I feel like your journey has been beneficial for you and your growth, definitely. How do you then, what are you giving to your daughter?
Her mother, Thomasina, amazing, Hypatian, Amazonian, tenacious woman.
I love this.
And I are mutually exclusive, and we brought two different deals to the table. Thomasina was pretty awesome. She wasn't about love and cuddles. I was the love and the cuddles. Thomasina provided all the home education stuff. She wasn't home educated, but the stuff that needed to be done at home. Yeah. All the food, all the clothing, all the shelter, all the if you will, survival nurture. And I was about love and intellect, and love and intellect. And as somebody who was clinging on to my own life and not being an effective father at all, the complete opposite of Craig. Craig delivered his own daughter and is a model dad.
Who does that? Like, that is a story that you don't hear that often. Like, oh my gosh, I literally delivered my own child in my living room like that's not the norm either. And the fact that he left what was, right-wing life,
Yeah.
Right? Didn't you call him like your right-wing friend with
Socialist
whatever?
tendencies. Yeah. But that's Craigie. Craigie's very much like that. I mean, Craigie is just this marvelous character. You know, he's almost like a suave socialist in the sense that he could walk into the room and said, "You know what? I delivered my own daughter," and it's almost like a seduction technique, isn't it? It's like all the women in the room. Oh, you know, so but
And it's so true, because I literally went,
yeah, it's like, yes, oh my God, give me a daughter. But that's Craigie, and I wasn't a model dad, so I had to the only way I could influence my daughter really was through a letterbox, you know, through very small apertures and sort of and random sort of, you know, commentary kind of events. So it was love and intellect. That was all I could do. Thomasina was about the practical stuff, and I was about. I taught her Spanish. I gave her. I nurtured her brains, and I nurtured her self-esteem and all that sort of stuff. How can we be expected to have? We don't have instant wisdom. Wisdom's retrospective. It comes. It always comes afterwards. And there you could argue is a design flaw of the universe. You know what I mean? It's because not only is it retrospective, and you can avoid similar mistakes in the future, but what we can't do, and you've experienced this, if only our kids, if we edit out all the kinky stuff, could come into our brains and our minds and our memories, and we edit out the stuff they don't want to see, and just sort of like, and experience a year of our lives in 30 minutes and come out, that we can't download our wisdom to them. They're going to screw up like we do, and that is so frustrating.
It is, but you know what? That's why it's important to be authentically you with your children. So they know, or they hear the stories of, I mean, listen, they don't need to hear about the night when mommy drank too much tequila. They don't necessarily need to hear that, but it might be something when they get to a certain age, you'd be like, yeah, so this was part of my, history. This is what I went through, and this was the consequence of that. And it was not great. And this is how I felt. This is authentically how it made me feel. This was the experience, etc., etc. So I'm trying to avoid you repeating my mistakes. You're going to make your own anyway, because you know what? You're a whole different human.
Yeah.
Let's try and avoid my mistakes. Try and do the things right that I did right. And then, your own mistakes are going to come anyway, you know? Yeah. And I hope that I'm going to be here to help you and guide you and go, okay, yeah, shoot. Okay. Ooh, that was a mess up. All right. So let's see, how can we get out of this or whatever, but you can't, they should know what your pitfalls are and were.
Yes.
We shouldn't pretend that we're one thing when we're not.
Nope.
Because we're all multifaceted with fuck ups and everything else. Why you were around in the beginning, then not for a long time, and now here again, she should know why. You know what I mean? So that she can also look at relationships herself in a healthy way, saying, okay, yeah, sometimes things go wrong and people have to, go their own ways. It's not all perfect. It's not all peaches and cream. This is what I'm learning from my life and from talking to people like you and other people. How is it that you then realize I'm going to start a radio station and I'm going to really commit to it, as well as being now present for my relationship and for my child? How did you didn't do therapy. So how?
No.
Not in the usual sense of the
word.
No,
not in the sense. I've stayed out of the diagnostic system all my life. The only reason I entered into the diagnostic system at any time is when I broke bones. I don't go to the doctor. I don't do any of that, and I certainly, and I don't know if or what, or even if I have a psychological illness. I could be bipolar. I could be a common or garden depressive. I could be just neurotic. I could be psychotic. I could be narcissistic. I could have borderline personality. I know there's a lot of fake ones out there. Oppositional defiant disorder. What, you're medicalizing bullshiness now? But you know what I mean? So, but there's obviously a screw loose in me.
Does it matter? Does it matter to give it a name?
I think I overcame, if it's not psychosis, I certainly overcame everything cognitively. I just hung on and hung on and hung on when I was, when life was so disastrous, I could be forgiven for being paranoid because the disasters were lined up like they were engineered to dovetail into each other in such a precision way that it would speak not only of a universe that was created, but a universe that was created malignantly. It was, and there was 14 years of precision engineered disasters, and it was tough staying sane. It was tough staying secular. It was tough staying sane in those days. And was
it tough staying alive?
We got 5 suicides in 2 generations of my family. So and this is the morbid fear I live with, because I'm confident that I won't be committing suicide. The gene is there. And, you know, people say, oh, suicide's this. There's no common sense understanding of suicide. It's a highly complex thing. So what can kick that trigger is not something that, it's not always about debt or bad history. There's something lurking in the human primal brain, almost like the scorpion, that is suicide for suicide's sake. And so being a father of a biological daughter and stepfather to others, but particularly Tigerina, my biological daughter, because she's got suicide in her blood, I fear that, because I know how to manage suicide. I know how to manage, and tenacity was part of it, certainly hanging on.
Yeah.
Luck was part of it, having rich friends whose sofas I could go on, or maybe beg for work they didn't really have, like, oh, I'll do your spreadsheets for you, oh, okay, and stuff like that. So luck, tenacity, being well-connected. I was a very well-connected tramp.
Your intellect is the most fascinating part of you, and the fact that you're able to pass that down to another human being is fantastic, and it's the best gift to the planet that you can give, and then have other people hopefully listen to what you have to say and whatever else. But that's what you were supposed to do. It wasn't your life. You didn't decide, okay, I've had enough, I'm throwing my hands up, because that wasn't your journey. Whereas it has been the case for many other people, with or without money.
I think that's what. Thank you. That's a rather brilliant perspective. And I'll have to say, part of the preemptive amnesty for those about to, is owing to the fact that it has been so ugly. People can be ugly, and I really honestly think there isn't a human being I can't relate to, monster or Buddha, that I can't, in some small way at least, relate to, and it's like and
that's a gift, by the way. That in itself is a gift.
I'm starting to see that it has equipped me with empathy, because I can be arrogant, and to be honest with you, I enjoy my arrogance.
Me too.
Yeah,
I enjoy my arrogance.
Yeah. Oh, I can swagger, but it's kind of weird. It's I can really. I think I was born quite empathic. I think as a little 5-year-old ginger boy. In 1969, a loner with friends, but a loner, very much a loner. I was empathic. I felt other people suffering, for sure I did. And so I was naturally empathic, but I think empathy is as much nurture and nature as any other skill. And I see empathy as a skill as much as it is an attribute.
it's important to own who you were in your past, what you were in your past, and know that it's part of your journey, making you who you are now. And think about you in 10 years from now, like how much more you will even have kind of added to your knowledge basket.
Every individual person, every person is 100 billion neurons. They're their own universe. And any twattery, any fuckwittery that you encounter in a person, whether it's a policeman or some guy wanting a fight or some pompous woman in Totnes who is the reincarnation of Princess Nefertiti, any of that, when there's this thing in Buddhism where you water the seeds of somebody's genius, you go behind. It's like every person is a dickhead meeting a dickhead. And it's like, oh, dickhead exchange. Oh, dickhead, opinion, left wing, right wing, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, and what you got to do is that's all nurture. That's all accumulated through twisting throughout life. You got to get to the id, the ancient 13 billion year universe behind those eyes. You want to get past the 50 years, 20 years, 100 years of twisting experiences and speak straight to cosmic history. And I love that idea. I don't know if I necessarily believe it, but attitudinally it works.
This is COVID times, so we're spending more time than normal with our family members, which for some people is great, for some people not so great. How is it going for you?
It's not graceful. I'm not brilliant at time management. So I guess it's a bit like playing Space Invaders. I'm tackling each little spaceship as it comes. So it's not, I'm not ordered. Until they start slowing down, it's that one. Like tonight is driven by my conversation with you. And then, so after that, I've got a thing that I have to edit with David Wood. And so
can you please tell my audience who David Wood is, because I keep hearing his name since becoming involved with Radio Hydrogen. I keep hearing his name.
David Wood is the go-to or the poster boy for transhumanism. Now, transhumanism, when people hear the word transhumanism, they sort of think, oh, you mean like Mormons or what's the L. Ron Hubbard thing?
Scientologists?
Scientologists. So they kind of weirdly, transhumanism is the idea of when we first discovered how to operate fire, we changed our biology. So we stopped being the normal primates. And we cooked our food and our intestines got shorter, our brains got bigger, and we became cleverer, and we became tool users, and we became technological, and we became physiologically more intelligent. Our journey into life augmentation and medicine and technology and health, increased health spans, increased lifespans. And transhumanists want to take that a stage further and bring that to everyone, no exclusions. And this is why I kind of overlap with them and empathize with them. They want to bring this. A lot of these technologies are available now, and the only thing in the way is our current status quo, our current governments, our current churches, our current religious beliefs. And it's about like Freddie Mercury says, this could be heaven for everyone. You know, as much as we've screwed the world up, we can do things to not screw the world up. Yes. And we can actually reverse it. Yes. And unless we implement that yesterday, we're not going to do it. And we need to. The only way it will happen is through authoritarianism, to creep back, to say, well, this is an emergency. Liberty is suspended for 100 years. Do as you're told. And so it's either that way or it's taking the transhumanist way and the ecologist way. And David Wood, I think, is just the ambassador, poster boy, and best advocate that I know of how to avert our disasters, and not just avert disasters and survive, but survive and prosper intellectually. And indeed, he will use the word spiritually. So to have fulfillment, not just survival, not just life extension, but purpose. Whether you believe the universe is purposeless or not, if you don't have a purpose, then to create a purpose.
I think the life extension is the thing that people will kind of, their ears will prick up to, because we all want to live longer. How do we live longer, better, more, healthier, and expand the length and the health of our universe? And we are coexisting. It's all part of what we do, and what, it's not over just because we no longer have an ozone layer. You know what I mean? It's still, there are still things that we can do now. So it's interesting to kind of hear about someone like him. And I know there's a whole movement, which I don't know how much publicity that David Wood and people that sort of feel like him and think like him are getting, especially when you're getting, certainly leaving an administration in America that is now finally leaving, that has kind of preached that science is just ridiculous, and there is nothing in the world for us to be worried about, and all that matters is about the rich getting richer, and that's it.
I understand people who believe in a free market economy. I completely understand it, and I'm kind of sad that it could be dying. And I understand people who are, old-fashioned in the ethical sense, but futurist socialist. But in my head, the two are still not mutually exclusive.
Right.
And I can hear both polar sort of advocates and flag wavers saying, "Of course they're mutually exclusive." No, they're not. No, not at all.
There's a way for them to coexist, right?
Absolutely. And I think people mistake the free market economy. The corporate-driven economy that we have is not a free market economy.
Right.
The right to trade, for some 25-year-old woman to go wake up in the morning, swallow some coffee, go down to her shed and make skateboard decks, which she then sells to somebody. That's a free market economy. And I hope she does well at it. The right to build and trade and exchange. I want that to continue, but
across the waters, across the land.
Yeah. But I want a bedrock. I want to know the NHS is the finest institution on the planet. I get run over by a police car. I know that directly behind the police car is an ambulance that's going to pick me up, save my life in the first instance, and then for the next year, my limbs and organs are going to be rehabilitated by doctors and nurses and auxiliaries and cleaners and kitchen staff for free.
I appreciate you spending 2 hours with me tonight.
It's been a lot of fun. And I tell you what, I say I've never had therapy. I've just had a bloody therapy session.
Well, I've done 2 sessions of therapy, and I had a very wise mother. And I'm all about learning and teaching. I think we are all teachers. We are all learners.
Agreed.
We should be. Until we breathe our last breath, we should always be learning and teaching. So I appreciate you. You have taught me a ton already in just my little time of being associated with you and Radio Hydrogen. And I'm excited about where this is all going to go. I'm so interested in your journey and where that's going to go. And I hope that we get to talk like this again. And eventually, I hope we get to talk in person. Over a cold bevy.
Yeah, absolutely, a cold bevy. God damn me, cool blimey. So I like the village. I like the Greenwich Village. So I'm going to do coffee with you in the village, mate. Yeah, I think it's great.
Perfect. I will be there. Absolutely, 1,000,000%. Thank you, Russell Rusty Burridge. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Good night, my darling.
Good night, Angel. Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning in to Living Out Loud with Loretta. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with a friend or several friends. Post a screenshot of this episode on your Instagram stories and tag me at Loretta McQuatchen. You can also watch this episode with a cold beverage on my YouTube channel. The link is posted below. Lastly, if you have the time, please leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts so that we can continue sharing stories, singing songs, and living our lives really out loud.